Live. Today is August the 13th, and today we have as a special guest, we have Jeff Haynie. He is the CEO and co-founder at Pinpoint. And Pinpoint is, based on my conversation with Jeff, it's a platform that helps developers to optimize the engineering process from idea to release. So, Jeff, thank you for joining us today here on Dojo Live. Welcome to the
Thank you.
show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. And soon we're going to have my fellow teammate Tulio join us any second now. So, Jeff, well, first of all, and I think Tulio's about to join us. So, uh, tell us a little bit about you, Jeff. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, your story.
Yeah, my story, I guess, is I started software engineering before it was called software engineering. I'm a product of the child of the 1980s, so I grew up around computers, but from a hobby standpoint, I had my first computer when I was 12, TI 994A, old Texas Instruments computer. And I'm self-taught, so I started learning how to program back in BASIC, Advanced BASIC, and eventually Pascal and a bunch of other languages. And I grew up just loving to program and loving to write software. Started with game software back in those days. We're trying to sort of use computers to do fun things. And then eventually, as I got a little bit older and got into professional, I started, of course, doing software development. A little bit of a stint in the U.S. Navy, doing some electronic stuff. But then I started working in software as a professional. And the last probably 30 years, I've been running several companies, software-focused startups, starting from an idea and then growing it, raising venture capital, and trying to grow the company, and eventually exiting. I've done that a couple of times and a few times. And so I've got a weird probably combination of I'm still a developer at heart. I still write code every day for the most part. My passion is developers and sort of the development process and how to build software better. That's sort of my personal passion. And on the flip side, I'm a software entrepreneur. So I think a lot about how to build companies, how to solve real world problems, how to turn those into, turn that idea into a business, and try to scale that business and create an outcome from it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeff. Now, tell us about Pinpoint.
Yeah, Pinpoint
what's it all about?
really. Yeah, well, it comes sort of from my desire. The last 20 years, I've really spent a lot of energy trying to build tools, developer tools. My previous company, we built a very popular open source product called Titanium, and we really tried to solve the cross-platform problem that existed when the iPhone and the Android devices came on the scene, and we all had to move from the web to mobile. And how do you help developers take their web skills and turn them into mobile, become mobile developers? Before that, I worked in a different platform that was sort of a telecommunications API platform. So I've really built, the last couple companies, last couple decades, I've really built developer-focused tools and platforms, really for the end-user developer. And then I came up with this idea of Pinpoint really was the other side of development, which is like the operational side of development. I still want to help developers build software better, but the problem I kept running into was how there's so many things as a developer you have to deal with every day, and as a development team, all the things that have to, you got 20 tabs on your desktop, you got all these different tools, all these different systems. And there's not a lot of visibility into the sort of the process and operations of software as a business. And so I really wanted to try to take that opportunity and that problem and try to create software that ultimately helps engineering teams and engineers, but also really helps the business really better understand and better deliver software as an operation.
Great, thank you again, Jeff. So, Tulio, we have you back, and I'm glad you're back here with us. Tulio, what's today's topic?
I hope I'm pixelated before it for. The topic today has been is streamlining developer flows. Can AI and machine models developers build better?
Oh, you're breaking up still, Tulio, a little bit. Okay, just so that you know. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of having a little.
Introduce.
Yeah, I think. Well, absolutely. Yeah, you go
today.
You go figure it out. No problem. So today's topic is AI and software, or streamlining developer workflows. Or in other words, can AI and machine learning models help developers build software better? So that's today's topic. Jeff, tell us, why did you choose this particular topic? Why did you think it was relevant in today's engineering world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a lot something I spend a lot of time thinking about, which is like we have all this amazing data that's sort of captive inside the engineering tool chain, if you will. I mean, you think about, I write software, the source code, I work on bugs or work on features. It's in some sort of system. I have a CI, hopefully a modern stack. I have a CI and a CD, and I have testing, and I have incidents and support tickets and APM data, all kinds of infrastructure data. And none of that data is really leveraged outside of those sort of silos. And to me, that was sort of an interesting opportunity. I think there's sort of three mega trends that drive this topic for me. One is the software building and software engineering has shifted to the cloud, sort of independent of the workloads. Maybe the workload still might be behind the firewall or legacy application, but more increasingly, the sort of process of building software is increasingly moving to the cloud, and all the tool chains and all the sort of the software itself in the operation. The second thing is that the API economy means that because those applications are more modern, in more cases than not, they also have APIs. So getting access to the data, getting data in and out of the systems has become more easy than ever. And I'd say the third sort of mega trend that really is very specific to this topic is machine learning. I mean, the commercialization and off-the-shelf ability to do really interesting, high-value, business and technical things with AI today, especially in the last couple of years, is much easier. You don't have to be Google and have PhDs and thousands of people working on machine learning to do sort of interesting things with AI today. You can kind of use off-the-shelf software and solve some pretty low-hanging fruit problems. And software engineering, because of those sort of three megatrends, it really presents the opportunity to really, how do we think about software development, and how do we allow sort of or build something that really allows sort of the machine to help us be better and help us build software better, faster, cheaper, with better visibility, things like that. And that's sort of, lots of people are working on different things with machine learning. And for us, AI was like a really interesting opportunity to take all this data, to take these sort of three mega trends, and to really solve some core problems we see in software engineering.
Great. Thank you again, Jeff. So, Tulio, do we have you back? You can give it a try.
I don't know. It looks fine on my end. If I'm coming pixel, I apologize. So, just curious, how does this work within the confine of Agile methodology? Does this bring in technology to support this? How does it boost into the workflow? Can you kind of give us a view of that, specifically to Agile? I know there's a bunch of different methodologies, but that seems to be the most prevalent, right? So have you incorporated this into the workflow? Tell us a bit how it works.
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably the most, so Agile, sort of to some degree is a second generation software development process, or at least methodology. And obviously Agile's an overloaded word, like, many other things in technology. Agile means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We've sort of, thought about, okay, well, what can we do to help Agile be better, or actually be the fulfillment of Agile, which is like, this lightweight process that adapts to the ever increasing changes in our environment or business requirements, et cetera, that the team often has to grapple with, shift in priorities, change in labor, shift in technology needs, et cetera. But how to, like, a parallel to that, how do we try to take a lot of the very low to no tech ways that, or things that happen inside of Agile, and how do we leverage data? How do we automate away a lot of that stuff? I mean, a simple example is planning. It's a very, very difficult but necessary thing that teams go through. It's a ritual that we all go through depending on your, sort of your methodology. You might do it every couple of weeks if you run sprints. Maybe you do it weekly if you do kind of more Kanban style, or every few weeks. But at some point, there's a plan of what we're going to go do. There's a need to prioritize, to estimate, to assign the work out to different people depending on skills. And so this ritual, whether it's highly process oriented in some companies, or whether it's fairly agile and very loosey-goosey, if you will, in other companies, at the end of the day, for the most part, most people do this sort of ritual, this ceremony. And so we sort of sit back and say, well, how can machine learning help us? I mean, what do we do in an agile, let's just call it sprint plan, for example? We ask questions about what is the prioritization of the backlog, what needs to be worked on, how long will it take, can you do it or can you do it, depending on the person and the team, et cetera. And so a lot of that is very no tech to low tech. It's very time consuming, and certainly in sort of the environment we're in now, where people aren't physically together, it's even harder. And so we sort of looked at that as an example of a problem that says, machine learning could be a phenomenal opportunity for this. We know everything you've done. We know what the last sprint you just did. We know the ranking of your backlog. We know the skills and kind of the capabilities of what people have worked on in the past, so we can build models about who should work on what potentially. We can forecast how long we think something's going to take based on past behavior and build models around that. And so we can take something that's a low, no-tech chore, it's a burden, it's something that has to be done, and it's usually very inaccurate, to something that is fun, interactive, and something that the machine or AI can come alongside and really help the team not only boost productivity, but also remove a lot of the unnecessary stuff that's really low tech and no tech for the team or for the scrum master, whoever's orchestrating that, and sort of make that a different type of experience.
We seem like we lost
I think we
Tulio
lost
again.
him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I was listening to you, and I just, I got to confess that I don't have a background in engineering, so I know I have like working knowledge of the software industry in general because I'm part of an engineering company. So Tulio is like the one who's has more experience, about 3 decades. But from a non technical point of view, and this having seen, observed a very broad array of developers from experts in many technologies, what I would like to ask you is, you provide insights to build software better. So the developers and engineers have access to this insights. Now, in the world of AI and machine learning, from what I know, it's from what I've seen recently. What I was wondering is, what would you say that would be? I have mixed feelings about AI. It's just like I'm even scared of it, And so, what would you say that you have seen that developers are more apt towards adoption and getting into AI, machine learning to make their work better, as opposed to other that might be, let's call them old school or older type of or different generation type of developers that might be a little bit on the reluctant side. So have you seen any of this when building Pinpoint?
Certainly I think the reluctance is more of, can a machine be accurate enough, or, the problem I think a lot that the AI and machine learning industry is grappling with is sort of, it's a black box, like a lot of other things. Like it's often not clear how the model, creates, at least for a human, it's not always clear. It's very sort of engineering oriented clear, but I mean, from a sort of high level, standpoint, it's not always clear how the model, after lots of observations, how it came up with the observation it came up with. And so, that sort of makes it a little bit mysterious and a little bit seem magical. And not mathematical. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's a sort of mathematical process, a computational process. It's not actually that, and as humans, we're actually much more, we're much more predictable than we think they are. The sort of the things that we do every day, and especially as it gets into software engineering, we're even more predictable than we think we are. And so, I think that's sort of the, so I think the sort of separate the sort of opportunities, demystify, we've always tried to, a lot of the things we call it showing our homework. We want to tell you why the model did what it did or predicted what it predicted. Mostly because we want you to be able to improve. So we want you to be able to try to understand, oh, okay, we've reserved a certain amount of capacity from the team because they always have unplanned issues that come in. Okay. Okay. Like as a team, I might not always remember to set aside, or if I do, I always will set aside the wrong amount, either not enough or too much. And so that's a good, or another great simple example is, someone's on PTO and that's going to impact delivery, right? And so there's sort of lots of sort of things that you can sort of do that aren't self-driving cars, right? We're not teaching the software to write software for you today. Maybe in the future that could be a possibility, but today it's much more about, okay, if you start writing code and you create a pull request, I know you're actually working on this issue. You don't need to tell another system that you're working on the issue, right? How do we sort of leverage sort of automation and machine learning and smarts to actually try to understand what's actually happening and provide that visibility to non-technical people as well as the teams themselves? And so I think that's, I think AI is probably one of these things that it has the opportunity to completely revolutionize humanity. And often, like any of these types of macro sort of trends, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad that comes with that.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Tulio, you want to give it a try? I know.
Yeah, sure. If this was to ask prompted reading the solution, what the frustration we're faced to develop that this is only we this. Can you walk through that, the logic?
Yeah, so I'll repeat the question as I think I understood it. It's like what sort of prompted me to create this? Kind of what's the origin story, if you will, and why do we create this? I mean, so for me, I'm a developer. My last company got to be a decent sized company. I was spending a lot of time outside of development, as you do when you build a company and you're spending time with customers and the field and things like that. And I was feeling disconnected from engineering, and especially when I was traveling. And the problem was I felt like engineering was becoming a black box, this thing I was sort of disconnected from, and it wasn't a communication problem, it wasn't a people problem, and it certainly wasn't a process problem. We did all the same Agile that everybody else does. It just felt like sort of information exchange. It was a sort of information disparity. And the only way I could get kind of the information and the knowledge and sort of the understanding of what was happening was I had to have a meeting. I had to have a conversation, and that's not scalable. I wanted something more self-service. And so I kept looking at my sales team, and they had a sales operations function, right? And anything I wanted to know about any customer, any activity, any account, any problem, I could self-service all that information. I didn't have to go hold a meeting to find out what was going on. And same with marketing. We had a phenomenal CMO. We had a great marketing operations function, and I could understand everything, every channel, everything that was happening, sort of inside of our go-to-market efforts. But with product engineering, it was let's call a meeting and let's talk about something that Jeff wants to understand or something. And I felt it was very disruptive. And I just wanted to, there's a sales ops function, there's a marketing ops function. Why isn't there like an engineering ops function where I don't want to slow down the engineering team? I don't want to take them off task or give them the wrong impression that something was more important than others. But I should be able to self-service a lot more of this. And I'm not looking for surveillance. I mean, this for me, it wasn't like, I'm not trying to see if people are doing the job. I trust the developers are doing all the right things. It was much more about how do I align sort of the needs and the understanding and the priorities and all the information as the CEO I get across the company and sort of certainly from customers to what's actually happening, and how do I understand that? And that's sort of what started this journey of saying, gosh, there's got to be a better way. I mean, I can't go into trying to go into Jira and dig through Jira, and then trying to go into GitHub and dig through GitHub, and trying to go in all these different systems and try to put this mental model together, which is always going to be changing. Why can't I just have something that does that for me? And then learns what I care about and learns about what they care about, and how do we think about just building better software and building the process of software. So we're not trying to disrupt Agile. We're just simply trying to make Agile to some degree be fulfilled.
Brilliant. So, any feedback from users? I like this is everybody wants to develop and use. Any push been some to get people to adopt this? You know, do they get some improvement in terms of productivity, the ROI, the unified way of organizing things, right? Is there some measurable impact that this is that would be in for a you know what, I'm going to adopt this my life. It's also going to my productivity. Although, what are some of the metrics that position the end user?
Right. So I think you're asking about metrics and sort of the ROI and sort of how sort of how do you get value out of this and how do you then measure that value and what those might be. I think that's sort of the line of questioning because you broke up a bunch on me. Is that right?
Yeah.
So here's what I'd say. So first and foremost, for me, it's just it's like how do you measure joy and how do I measure sort of automating away a lot of things that aren't sort of super productive or super helpful, but they're necessary. So that can be sometimes hard to measure. The way we measure it is time people are spending in the application. That tends to be our single biggest driver. If they're spending how many hours a day, how many people in the company, and then what are the sort of activities that they're doing in the product with their daily, with their planning, with their retros, with sort of like the engagement in the product, because that to us is the driver of growth for us, and it's the driver of monetization. And it's the sort of for us the single leading indicator of are we doing our job right, and are we really helping people? Now, obviously, the ROI side of the question, if that is sort of the driving force of how we think about it, what we're trying to measure, and sort of what we think about success for us. Then the ROI for the customer really is about, engineering ends up being, in most companies at least, engineering ends up being the single biggest cost center for the most part, at least the human side of this, especially for software companies. They're the most expensive people. They're the hardest to retain. They're the hardest to recruit. And so, that ends up being a pretty simple ROI. If you can sort of any one of these things, if I can create any amount of productivity enhancement or acceleration or predictability or visibility into what you're doing, given how important software engineering is to every company, then I can both make the lives and the developers and development teams that joy that they'll get out of using it. And on the flip side, the business people will get the sort of the feeling and sort of understanding and operational and visibility. And also, of course, with productivity comes revenue and cost reduction and things like that. So that's sort of how we think about both sides of that question.
Jeff, it seems that we're coming up on time. And first of all, thank you, for having shared your expertise and your insights with us. And unfortunately, we know we had Tulio on and off. That's our loss because he's got a very good handle on the industry and engineering as a whole. So what I would like to just remind our audience is that next week we're going to be having 3 more shows and exactly on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it'll all be there right there on the website. And let me tell you, we usually, by the way, Jeff, we usually announce by the end of the session who's coming next week. And next week we're going to be speaking with, we're going to be speaking on Tuesday with, we got Agile Baum, the CEO of Viral. And we're going to be speaking about, I don't have the topic yet for that interview. Actually, it's none of the guests have sent me the topics yet. But keep an eye on dojo.nearsoft.com, right on there in the upcoming calendar. They should be up by Friday at the end of the day. Jeff, before we go, I'd like to ask you personally, again, from a non-engineering point of view, and I know that there's going to be like a ton of engineers watching, and also other executives at technology companies that might be watching. What I'd like to ask you is very simple. If you were to leave our audience with some words of wisdom about your journey building the company that you have been working so hard at, what would these words of wisdom be? What would you like to leave the audience with, Jeff?
Oh, good question. Really, a really tough question. I guess my style, and I guess what I've learned, and so this is sort of my words of wisdom are, two things. One is I like to say I have strong opinions loosely held. So I have a very strong opinion about how things should be, but with data, with insight, with other people's perspective, with diverse opinion, my opinions can change and my insights change based on that. The second thing, and that probably the second thing is driven by the first thing, is iteration. I'm a big believer in start small, iterate. The market will pull the product out of you. Customers will drag the sort of requirements out of you and the problems that they have that they want to solve, the job that they want your product to do. And so as long as you're willing to sort of have a strong vision, strong opinion, a strong approach on where to go, but also are willing to sort of navigate and change as new data, new situations, new context arrives, and you're willing to move fast in this sort of way, then doesn't mean you'll always be successful, but you're going to have a lot of fun doing it, and hopefully you'll build an amazing product.
Great, that's awesome, Jeff. I really appreciate your having shared your expertise with us, and let's see if we can have at least Julio say the goodbye words.
Julio's back. He sounds good.
I
It looks
gave
good.
up on the Wi-Fi and I connected with my phone.
Okay.
Oh, it sounds great. The phone is better.
I should have done that a while ago. Here we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Today I had Wi-Fi problems. But
hey, Julio.
I'm glad you joined us. Thanks for the insights, and I'll have to watch the show because I missed half of it. So thanks for joining us. Just stay with us as we wrap up.
Absolutely.
Definitely come back, everybody, on Monday for the DojoLIVE recap show. I'll make sure the internet is working, and we'll recap all the interesting things we learned this week. And what do we got coming up next week as well, Carlos?
Yeah, we kind of briefly, excuse me, I'm sorry. We've kind of briefly mentioned it, Julio, but now that you bring it up, let's just go over it. We got viral, by the way. We got AJ Baum, but at the viral. And also, I don't have the topic yet, but that's on Tuesday. And Wednesday, I just realized that I have the Chromatic. We're going to have Jeff Allen from Chromatic, and we do have the topic. Let me correct myself. The topic is healthy people, healthy buildings, and a healthy environment. So discover how building spaces can advance human health and well-being while simultaneously contributing to a more sustainable world. So that's a health tech related company. And finally, on Thursday, let's see who we have on Thursday. And again, I don't have the topic. We have Nirit Rubenstein from DojoLIVE. Again, I don't have the topic, but it should be as interesting as ever. I don't recall any boring interview that we've had. It's actually the opposite, where they're all dynamic, fun, and educational, and of great value to our audience. With that being said, Jeff, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And we're going to go off the air now, and just stick around for 1 minute. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.